Unless your confidence level is 9,000. Odds are you can relate to the feeling of being disappointed in yourself, anxious, feeling left behind whenever you look outward and maybe compare yourself with other people. And it certainly doesn't help when you look around and you see articles like top 30 under 30, or you should have this amount when you're this age, or in some cases, hey, this genius startup founder, the early 20s, sold and now is a millionaire. So in today's video, I'll go through how I've handled this personally, what some of the research says, and of course end with practical tips that hopefully are useful for you as well. Hey guys, it's Sunmin and welcome back to Your Money Game, the show where we'll save, invest, and feel better about money. Before I begin, maybe I'll walk you through some of the context in my life, so therefore when you hear about my experiences, hopefully it achieves two things. One is that you might realize that just how different we are in our lives, but at the same time we can all relate to those experiences and feelings. Or two, there are some similarities that you can see, and hopefully what I'm sharing becomes much more relatable. So I'm a 39-year-old guy working in the ad industry, earning a decent salary, and I have to say that I have no real issues. I'm fairly lucky to have a great relationship, and overall life is pretty good. But along the way, I've also experienced like 2.5 failed businesses, lost more than $60,000 of my own money in that way, and of course, I've had my own fair share of like issues with my career growth, and sometimes, even today, I still feel uncertain about my future. So despite my objectively good fortune so far, sometimes those feelings still do come up. Because it happens when I look across and I see a friend in New York landing a great gig in Facebook, I see a junior of mine buying a really nice house, or maybe some of my peers just zooming ahead of me from a career standpoint. So reflecting on all this, I have 3 key points. And the first is that no matter how successful you are, there always seems to be a target right ahead of you. So I remember that in my second job, I was so confident and naive that I was talking to a colleague and saying that, hey, guess what, when I make this amount of money, that's it. I'm going to be happy, and cause that's all I need. But you know what? That goal came and it went, and then the next thing you know, there's another goal right in front of me waiting. And sometimes those goals aren't even mine. They're just other people's achievements, which I somehow felt that, hey, I should have that too. That's why they became automatically a target for me to try and strive for. The second thing that I learned is that emotions are just signals and they're not conclusions. So I don't know about you, but I definitely don't have like 100% control about how I feel about things. And on top of that, despite again having pretty good fortune, these negative feelings do come up. Now, one of the useful things that I've learned is that we are not our thoughts or feelings. While our emotions are strong signals about how we're interpreting the world, who we are really just boils down to our actions. And this is useful because sometimes on top of feeling that sense of left behind, you feel bad for feeling that feeling. To me, this is a personal belief, but I do think it's critical, and it's also related to the third point. And this third point is that most of us have more control and power than we realize when it comes to managing these feelings. And the key word here is managing. Because hey, our emotions just bubble up, right? It's very difficult to control if and when it comes up. But the important thing is how we deal with it. More of this in the last section. But in the meantime, if you are getting value out of this video, I would appreciate your support in clicking a like and maybe even comment down below, because that really does help my channel grow. Thanks. Before I get to my personal tips, here's what I found from an interesting piece of research that was done amongst 1,300 South Koreans. Super summarized, it's a study that looked at the use of Facebook as well as social comparison. And what they found is that if people upwardly compare, they wind up having lower self-esteem and also lower life satisfaction after that. And the reason why I bring it up is that I do think social media itself is one of those triggers of those negative feelings we might have. So if you're feeling that way, the research implies that we can do 3 things. 1, you reduce those sources of comparison, maybe just cut down your social media usage. 2, work on building better social support. Or 3, work on your own self-esteem. So beyond those 3 things, here are a few tips from my own experience that I found useful and hopefully you find useful as well. The first is a master tool that I mentioned in a previous video before, and it's something that I learned from Tony Robbins. And he has a phrase that when you encounter any barrier or challenge in life, you can either change your perception or you can change your procedure. I've always found this very empowering because it tells me that I have a choice and I have the power to change the conditions in my life. The second tip is that when we look at other people's successes, we only tend to see the best aspect of it and oftentimes the superficial side of it. It's difficult and maybe even impossible to know the reality of what they went through to get to where they are, or even what is their current life condition. Would we be willing to put in the same time and effort or overcome the kind of challenges they would have overcome, or maybe even want to live the day-to-day life that they have? Once you ask yourself these kind of questions, you might find that, hey, all that success might not be as enviable as you think it is. The next tip is for those of you who judge yourself harshly. And I think it's important because sometimes it's so autopilot that we become very critical of ourselves, and this might even just fly under our radar. But if you realize that yes, that's one of the things that is really causing you to feel that negative feeling, one of the useful things that I've learned is that it is not my duty or responsibility to judge myself. There's enough people in the world that are already judging, so hey, don't make it your responsibility to put that judgment on yourself. Especially when you're looking at work, make sure it is something that is being judged by somebody who's objectively in the right position to do that. Now, it doesn't mean that everything they say is right, and it doesn't mean that everything you think is wrong either. But it's all part of the process of finding that balanced and objective view on what kind of feedback to take. The second tip is somewhat related because if you're somebody who judges yourself harshly, it might be true that you are finding it difficult to accept compliments. And this is critical because if you don't accept compliments, it's as if you're not really acknowledging your own strengths. You might be thinking to yourself it's no big deal, or those guys, they probably got it wrong, or maybe I just got lucky. Now, it took some practice for me, but it really just started with accepting any form of compliment or praise with a simple thank you. And that's it. From there, try to put on an objective lens to see what are the patterns in the things that people are complimenting you for. What it leaves you with is an awareness of what you're possibly good at. And then you can choose to maybe double down the effort to improve those strengths, or maybe even look for opportunities on where you can leverage them better. So just to share, a strength that I'm personally proud of is presentation skills. And it really just started maybe because of my career in advertising. So starting with client presentations to presenting to senior clients, CEO levels, and pitching, and on top of that, it led to a business where I was training other advertising agencies as well. And it's not because I was a natural or anything. In fact, I very distinctly remember getting feedback from my boss last time that I was too nervous, I was speaking too fast, people weren't understanding me. So I learned to be better in how I pace. And now, in this case, I'm doing YouTube videos, I'm learning better on how to make videos as well. So there's always some level of improvement that can be done. My point is that strengths help give you self-esteem, and it begins by accepting it and then building on it. And the final one is something that I'm still working on, because occasionally I still do find myself looking at people who are in a much more successful financial or career situation, and I end up feeling like, oh wow, I wish I could be there. And I keep trying to remind myself that at the end of the day, my net worth is not the same thing as my self-worth. It's really easy to look at somebody's external condition and admire that. So that's why I remind myself that, hey, I don't really know who they are, what their character is like, what their relationships are like. So for me, it's a good reminder to just focus back on myself and living a life according to the values that I believe in, so that at the end of the day, if I look myself in the mirror, I'm happy with it. So what about you? How do you deal with some of those negative feelings when it does come up? So I would appreciate your thoughts, and maybe you can leave it in the comments below. With that said, thanks for watching guys. I really hope you found this useful. If you did, I would appreciate your support in clicking that like, sub and bell button, because I'll be back again next Sunday with a brand new video. And until then, you take care and keep playing your own game.